Severe weather is front and center tonight in the Northeast and in the northern mid-Atlantic states, or at least parts of the Northeast and the northern mid-Atlantic states. And our meteorologist, Joe Rayo, will be on top of all the radars that are impacted by the severe weather in the Northeast and the northern mid-Atlantic states. We also have some severe weather to talk about in the middle Mississippi Valley. And of course, we are all just anxiously awaiting for that weekend of very chilly air. Let's call it chilly air that's coming in to the eastern part of the United States, but not quite making it all the way down. All of that and more on tonight's Joe and Joe Weather Show. By the way, Joe, it got to 99. I didn't realize this, but yesterday it got to 99 in Atlanta. And today they were talking about the fact that it was a smidge cooler today, a smidge cooler at 96. And I was thinking about
what did you get up to? You were only in the upper 80s.
I only made upper 80s here. The highest I saw on my thermometer, I believe, was 87. I'm just right now. I'm just going to check the Blairsville Airport here in Northeast Georgia. I had some thunderstorms nearby. I heard the thunder, and we got some clouds out of it, but really, we didn't get much in the way of precip. We didn't get any precip at all, actually, and that only lasted for about a half an hour, 45 minutes in terms of the clouds, and then the sun was back out. Still, it was reasonable. Right now, it's 85. The relative humidity is 69% because my dew point is at 74. Oh, God, 74. What? What's the matter?
No, I'm just, it's 74 dew point. That's
the visibility.
My God.
The visibility is 10 miles, though. Okay, so the high I see on the hourly temperature, it got at the airport today. It got to 93, shortly before. What is that? 16:55. So that's what? 4:55 p.m. It got to 93. And let me look back to yesterday. Low overnight was 69. This is one of these airports, Joe. They take an observation like every 20 seconds and they post it on the history. So you got this long scroll down. Yeah, the airport got to 94 yesterday, and Atlanta was 99. So that sort of makes sense. But I didn't get to 90. I got to about yesterday. I got to about 87, 88, and that was just about it. So.
Yeah, I'm just looking here on the chat board, talking about the converse of all of the heat and humidity. David Scott saying, Joe R., I'll be in your old stomping grounds of Atlantic Beach, New York on Saturday. Well, actually, they're not really my old. I mean, I have relatives who live out in Atlantic Beach, but I have not been out there in decades. So, as a kid, I remember Atlantic Beach. I certainly remember the Atlantic Beach Bridge and also Atlantic Beach, too. My father, who passed away back in the 80s, he used to be a big fishing enthusiast, and he used to go on the jetties, that those rocky, craggy, boulders that extended out into the ocean, and he used to go out there to try to catch striped bass from Atlantic Beach. He's talking about, are we talking about wind chills in the 50s with gusty winds? And yeah, Joe, I honestly now don't think that here in the Hudson Valley, not talking about New York, not talking about Long Island or coastal New Jersey, but here in the Hudson Valley, I do not think on Saturday that we're going to get out of the 60s. And with winds gusting at times to over 30 miles per hour, I'm thinking that, yeah, those wind chills, it's going to feel more like the 50s as opposed to the 60s on Saturday. And I in terms of the sky condition, I saw one forecast that said mostly sunny for Saturday, and I most definitely disagree with that. I think, in fact, on Saturday, we may see a lot more in the way of cloud cover than sunshine straight on through much, if not all, of the day. And if you want a sunny day, you may have to wait until Father's Day on Sunday for that, because I think, quite frankly, Saturday is going to be kind of a cloudyish day, some intervals of sun from time to time, a gusty wind, temperatures in the 60s, and again, the winds at times making it feel like it's only in the 50s, more like a day out of April. as
Yeah.
opposed to June.
I don't disagree. Cold air aloft. There's also with the upper low dropping the way it is off the New England coast. There's a little short wave that's going to be dropping southward. That's going to have a little patch of rain that comes down from, say, Maine and Nova Scotia, just sort of clips southeastern New England. It's not much, but it does indicate that there might be a little bit of cloudiness that comes down on the back side. So that may impact temperatures as well for Long Island on Saturday. So it's a little tricky. In a way, I look at it. I look at the way the upper air is set up, and I'm thinking about a sort of a wintertime pattern where you get a deep trough just off the East Coast, but you're still sitting in the body of it, so you wind up with the instability clouds and that sort of thing. It's probably that's probably the kind of day Saturday will be. I think the further west, once you go west of New York City, you start go further west, it becomes less of an issue. I think as you head into western Jersey and through Pennsylvania, it'll be cool, but they'll probably wind up with a little bit more in the way of sun as you go inland and maybe less in the way of sun as you go east. And yeah, Sunday should be okay. I'm thinking low to mid 70s should do it for highs, and it's going to take the back edge of that upper trough off the East Coast doesn't really get out of the way until sometime on Tuesday. So we're going to see that the temperatures running below average into the start of next week, and then after that, to me, it just sort of in the who knows land. I was thinking, looking at the long range again. You look at the ensembles and all the rest of it, and there's a lot of they seem very unstable from run to run. The NAO is sort of vacillating back and forth near the neutral line. You got the PNA falling and then rising. It makes for I think a lot of variability as to what might happen at the very end of the month and in the beginning of July. Some people are looking at the European and the long range and saying, "Oh, it's going to get hot." I was looking at the GFS, which doesn't seem to be contaminated by tropical storms at the moment, um, showing troughing still wanting to come back to the east, even though we get into a little bit of a ridge position for a short time. So I call it a toss-up in the long range. We'll go over that in just a little bit.
Okay. While you were talking, I indeed called up a graphic which I want to share now with everybody, and that would be
Please
the
do.
lightning map from Go 16. And I got to tell you something, Joe. Considering that much of central Pennsylvania through central and eastern New York is under a tornado watch right now, the showers and storms really are not, producing all that much in the way of lightning. In fact, if anything, it seems like it's actually diminishing some with the passage of time. You see that there's some lightning clusters or flashes that are occurring over in central Pennsylvania and across upstate New York up toward the Adirondacks. But for the most part, and it appears here that there's actually a slot of dry and clear weather currently over the immediate tri-state area. And then we'll have to wait until maybe after 10 o'clock for the skies to cloud over again. And possibly then we'll have to deal with the potential for some shower and thunderstorm activity. I commented on my Facebook forecast for the Hudson Valley that I think the best chance for seeing any kind of activity would be between 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. And in some cases, giving a nod to the Storm Prediction Center and the fact that they did issue that tornado watch, which is in effect until 11 o'clock tonight, mentioning the possibility of maybe some strong wind gusts, a bit of hail, a downpour or two. And that pretty much will be the story. We picked up, by the way, here in Putnam Valley, about just under a third of an inch, 0.31 inches of rainfall this morning. Between about 5:30 and 7:30, there was some pretty good thunderstorms that came rumbling through the vicinity and did bring down a few heavy downpours. But it was dry for much of the day today, although rather cloudy. And again, right now, from the satellite picture, it seems, at least from the satellite view here, that we're into basically a dry or a clear spot for the moment. But that won't last long because those clouds and the associated showers and storms are rapidly moving in from, again, the west.
Right. And while you're loading up a few radars, I would suggest the State College radar because there looks like there's a couple of strong cells there. You might want to pop that one up, and maybe up and around Syracuse, you could pop up that radar too. In the meantime, while you're loading, I'm going to just take the screen back for just a trifle moment here and go to the full U.S. radar view. It seems like the southern part of this area of thunderstorms is actually busier down in South Carolina in particular, and there is a severe thunderstorm watch up for a good chunk of North and South Carolina. I'm just going to bring up. Let me go back to get SPC up here so we can just take a look at the ongoing watches because there's a few of them that are up there. The tornado watch, by the way, is being gradually whittled away. As you'll notice here on the loop here, uh, there's a small area around the Catskills. I'm sorry, there's a small area in eastern Pennsylvania that's still under a tornado watch. Then they've gotten rid of the watch in between that and a shrinking area in northeastern New York and western Vermont. So not much left to that one. The severe thunderstorm watch, it looks like the one to the south, they had one here. I don't see the box for it though. They did have one from south central Virginia into western South Carolina. That looks like that's done or just about dead. They got rid of most of that. There's a little bit of it left in central Virginia. That's going to go away soon too, and in northeastern Virginia. There's also a watch box up in a small watch area up in southern Ohio. But at least in terms of current activity, when we look at the radar, there are a bunch of severe thunderstorm warnings in central South Carolina that are moving southward. And you can see there's sort of the snaking line here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of them. And up in Virginia, I would say north and west of Richmond, there are a couple of tornado warnings there. Let me punch up Tornado HQ. And by the way, folks, it's 7:44 Eastern Time. So if you're watching this on a replay, obviously the radars are dated. So please go to your local National Weather Service forecast office for the latest weather information regarding these storms. And you can do that by going to weather.gov. In Goochland, Louisa, and Powhatan counties in Virginia, we have a tornado warning up for another half hour. Severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado, located near Gum Spring or near Haddonsville, moving southeast at 25 miles an hour. And there's one that's going to expire in about 30 seconds in Fluvanna, Goochland, and Louisa counties. Also, severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located over Ferncliff or near Haydensdale. So it's basically part of the same thing, just the new warning sort of extends it a little bit further to the east. So the rest of them are all severe thunderstorm warnings, as the radar indicates. Also seeing a couple of severe thunderstorm warnings in southeast Ohio, and you see the two little watch boxes there. So if you'd like, you can punch up a couple of your local radars there that you have, Mr. Rayo, and have at it.
Well, I have right now, I have State College, and you can see that there are some showers and storms, but you could also see that they're kind of fading out or breaking up. Not really, all that much to show you from the perspective of central sections of Pennsylvania, again, around State College area. Let me change that quickly to go up to Binghamton. You can see that the line is a little bit more active up there, but even there you could see that with the passage of time, the activity all begins to fade out. All the deep shades of red and orange, and all that's left toward the latter few frames of the loop, there's a broad area of yellow, and that's just to the west of Schenectady, Albany, and that's moving into the capital district of New York State, probably within the next hour or so. So, Tim Veltman, you're up there. You'll probably, if you're not already, hear some thunder as that area approaches. And let's check out. Whoops, didn't mean to do that. Let me. Hang on.
By the way,
to
at 4 o'clock this afternoon, just before 4 o'clock, when they just put the tornado watch up, the line was moving into western New York and was really impressive. I must have counted about well over a dozen severe thunderstorm warnings that were up in western New York down into northwest PA. And then I was doing other things and I didn't get to look at the radar for like a couple of hours. And when I looked at it at 6 o'clock and I looked at it, I was like, what happened? Because it just didn't look as impressive as they were moving to the east. So there was some hints there that the strength of the line was going to peak out early and then start to fade away. Even SPC made an allusion to that in one of their discussions regarding the Pennsylvania storms you just showed, talking about a small window of opportunity where the storms might reach supercell status, and then after that, conditions would become less favorable for it, and the cell would probably fall apart.
Well, this is all related to what we were looking at last night. Last night, we were watching that line that was approaching Milwaukee and Chicago, and it was a fairly impressive line. We said that it would have to go up and over the ridge, so to speak, take a path to the north and east, and then come straight down, so to speak, south and southeast into our neck of the woods for this evening. And we're seeing that happen. But again, this area is kind of falling apart right now. David Schwartz wants all of us to know off the chat board that at 7:41, a severe thunderstorm capable of producing a tornado was located near Gum Spring, Oregon.
Ah,
Oregon? Or no, Gum
no,
Spring.
Gum
No,
Spring,
Gum Spring,
Virginia. Yeah,
Virginia. Or when it says Gum Spring, and then there was an OR after that. I said, OR, Oregon? What is he talking about Oregon for? Near Gum Spring or near Haddonsville, moving southeast at 25 miles per hour. And that is Goochland. I wonder if that has any. No, it's spelled the wrong way. I don't know how many of you remember Dr. Bill Gooch, who used to do the weather on Channel 7, who was also the head of the Hayden Planetarium back in the 80s. Goochland, Louisa, and Powhatan, Virginia. So there you go.
right. That must have been the same one that I did just before from Tornado HQ, unless they resent it and then they extended it. But no
Yeah,
matter.
Chuck Cardillo points out that the air is too stable in the Catskills, too stable for tornadoes here in the western Catskills. He writes that the temperatures are much cooler here as opposed to western New York, and that is probably why the rather robust activity is rapidly decreasing as it moves toward the east.
You also have to wonder. You also have to wonder whether those overnight and morning that cluster of thunderstorms that moved overnight and this morning, because they did go through the Catskills and then they kind of came down your way and down into New Jersey and Southeast PA and also over Long Island, and they weakened fairly quickly after about 8:30, 9 a.m. But you have to wonder, and we've talked about this in instances where this happens, where you get stuff early in the day and in a situation that looks like it's going to be ideal for daytime heating, but it winds up stable. It basically, I guess the best way to put it is that it just basically robs the atmosphere of whatever energy it has, and there's not enough time and not enough daytime heating in order to compensate for that for when the next round comes with the main cold front. So perhaps that had some impact this morning, having that cluster of storms coming over the top, stabilizing the atmosphere at least enough. That was a big tornado watch geographically that they put up for Pennsylvania and New York
Absolutely.
State. That was one of the big. That might have been one of the larger ones that I can remember. It covered a whole lot of geography. I was kind of surprised. I actually never expected them to do a tornado watch. I thought they would have done a severe thunderstorm watch, but you know, this is the problem with convection, is that it's so mesoscale, so localized that you could have the broader models showing you this, what looks like a really ideal situation for severe weather development, and sometimes it just doesn't quite work out that way. And my own approach on it, my own opinion on that, and I'm sure Joe you'll agree, is that in situations, at least certainly when it comes to severe weather, I know the storm freaks are going to get all upset about this, but This is sort of the time where you see that the risk is there, and if they don't happen, you're not unhappy. Let's put it that way, because you really don't want to. Those some of these storms are so darn destructive, and certainly when it comes to tornadoes, we know what kind of destruction they can do. So if you get a day where there's risk and it doesn't happen, that's a good thing. That's not a bad thing.
And right now we have on the screen, we've been showing this now for the last couple of minutes, New York and actually up in New York. And there's not much to show. The last few frames of the loop, you can see some of the activity from the west now only edging into the northwest corner, the westernmost part of the Hudson Valley. And, we'll see how that holds together. But it doesn't look like anything that you need to write home about. It does not look like anything terribly aggressive in terms of activity. We need to heat the air up again, and we'll do that tomorrow. And it'll be interesting to see what happens tomorrow because we have a relatively weak front, but again, as I mentioned yesterday, that could produce a few isolated pop-up, locally strong thunderstorms in portions of the tri-state area. And indeed, the forecast for tomorrow afternoon does indeed make mention of the possibility for a few thunderstorms. Temperatures tomorrow could reach well into the 80s with dew points in the mid 60s and upper 60s. And then it all goes away
Yep.
very quickly tomorrow night. And we change over into a pattern more apropos of the early part of spring with gusty winds, much cooler temperatures. And also, as I said, looks to me like a lot of cloud cover because the atmosphere is going to be just so unstable when we get into Saturday.
The Storm Prediction Center's outlook for this evening. Now they're gonna have to update this. Obviously, a lot of these thunderstorms in the Northeast have already played through, so the enhanced area should go away. You still have slight risk down into the Carolinas. That's mostly working itself out now. An east-west band of slight risk from western Illinois to southeastern Nebraska, northeastern Kansas. The marginal risk goes further west into Colorado, and also we have a marginal risk along the central and eastern Gulf Coast, and that is also showing up with some showers and thunderstorms along I-10 from just west of Mobile all the way to Lake Charles. In the other area that we were looking at in terms of the slight risk, there's a cluster of thunderstorms in northern Missouri. At the moment, not too much else happening, and there's a cell that's formed well out in Kansas there, in west central Kansas, and we'll watch because that's one of the areas that SPC has got a little watch box up there for this evening and tonight. Now, tomorrow, SPC actually has increased the area of risk. They did this morning. We were talking yesterday, Joe, about New England. Well, now they've got a marginal risk from New England down the coast through Delaware, and then it goes to slight risk in southern Virginia, North South Carolina, back to me, and in eastern Tennessee. By the way, I've been under slight risk for severe weather. I think each of the last, not every not consecutively, but I would say probably 3 out of the last 4 days. And I really haven't seen much of anything here where I am specifically. Around me, yes, I'm learning how these mountains where I live, in some instances, shield the thunderstorms away from me, depending on the wind direction. So I'm still kind of figuring all that out. But this front tomorrow, I'm thinking that they'll probably be one of those really skinny lines, these really thin, skinny lines with small thunderstorms in there. When it goes on through, maybe you get it, maybe you don't. It doesn't last very
Right.
long. And it really is the mechanism to bring down that cooler, drier air that we're having for the weekend. Marginal risk also up in eastern Montana and eastern Wyoming and extending across northern Wyoming. Also, small area of marginal risk in northern Idaho and northwestern Montana. They've been getting rough weather from earlier this week, and now they're getting some more. Notice on Saturday to Sunday, from Maine down to South Georgia, throughout the Great Lakes, the Ohio Valley, the Mid-Atlantic states, much of the Southeast, the Middle Mississippi Valley, into the plains. No thunderstorms are forecast whatsoever. And except for a small area of marginal risk up in Montana and Idaho, it's just a couple of areas of general thunderstorm activity that's being indicated. And then in the day 4 to 8 time frame, I don't think they had any risk indicated. Predictability too low for day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, and day 8. Meanwhile, there you can see on the U.S. loop with the lightning flashes, you see how the concentration there that's moving down through South Carolina is actually the North Carolina cells have disappeared. You still have South Carolina cells there. Also, some cells along the west coast of Florida, up and around into the Panhandle and down into the Gulf Coast, and the other ones that are scattered. Actually, most of the country today is doing okay. And by the way, if you look closely at the loop, you can see the fronts here pretty well. Here's the first one, and that's coming through tonight. And here's the second one right behind it. That is the big upper low that was in Montana that went northeast, and now it's going to go southeast. I don't know why that
Right.
happened. That disappeared on me. It's going to go southeast, and that upper low, so kind of did a track like this, and then it's going to come down into New England, and that's going to set up this this strong northerly flow in the upper atmosphere where the jet goes all the way down into northern Florida. I will get some dew point relief from that. I probably will not get much temperature relief over the weekend. And by the way, Joe, next week, middle of next week, they're going for near 100 degrees in Atlanta next Wednesday and Thursday. I happen
I
to
I
be
saw that.
I happen to be channel flipping, so we were talking about the excess heat being indicated by the CPC folks. Well, um, across the South, and I think that may play out. Rainfall starting to look like a summertime QPF map from WPC, where it's mostly about daytime scattered thunderstorms. You get them, you might not get them. So you're not really seeing a whole lot in terms of measurable precip. You got a couple of patches here and there in the east of 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a quarter, inch and a half. Down in Florida, you see it. You see that little stripe there from St. Louis northwestward to Kansas City, and then also getting still showing that monsoonal rain extending up from Mexico into eastern Arizona, western New Mexico, on up into western Colorado. Some areas getting anywhere from 3/4 of an inch to an inch and a half, and even a couple of pockets of 2 inch plus, which is good news, but it's not covering the whole areas because California is still mostly dry, as is Nevada, and most of Texas is going to be on the dry side.
Oh, I have three things to note here on the chat board. I'll go backwards. Excuse me. I'll go backwards and say thank you to Scott Donig for hitting super chats tonight. I also should mention, according to Chuck Cardillo, that the tornado watch for his area has just been canceled. And third, and this is the most impressive of all, we have on the chat board tonight, Joe, Alicio Campos watching us from Brazil.
Oh,
Believe it or not.
hi. That is, I always get a kick out of folks that are watching from other nations, and we welcome you. It's your winter. You're going into your winter now in Brazil, but I'm, you know, I don't have I don't have a lot of familiarity with the climate there and how it works. Uh, but I'm sure that you probably get your fair share of very interesting weather. You know, Joe, they used to think that they didn't get hurricanes in the South Atlantic, but then over the last, I don't know, 10 years or so, we've actually seen a couple of tropical systems form um, near the equator or just south of the equator that came inland, coming in from the east, which was kind of interesting. Very rare event. Very
Yeah,
rare to see that.
yeah, because near the equator, for example, there's no Coriolis force. And so logically, you would not expect to see any kind of tropical development. But yeah, every once in a great while, there is something that kind of churns up in that area. And yeah, and I agree with you. I'm not too familiar with the climate of Brazil, other than the fact that you're right that next week they'll move into the winter season. But I'm sure that they do get their fair share of, well, Brazil is such a tremendously large country across South America. So I'm sure you can get all kinds of conditions from rain to snow, depending upon the elevation. And but I find it great. I get a big kick out of the fact that we've had people as far to the north as Alaska, northern Alaska. We've had people in Ireland and parts of Europe
And
tune into
Australia.
us, Australia, and now here we
Australia.
have Brazil.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Amazing.
always get a kick out of that. All right, here's the upper air, and here we can take a look at what's happening from the weekend, and I'm backtracking. This is back to we can go back actually to Monday when we had our own trough in the east that was pulling out, and of course you see the ridge that is building in the south, right in the central Gulf states. Again, this was on Monday, and this very deep trough that came into the western part of the United States. And as deep as this trough is, it's it's a shame that its influence in terms of bringing some wet weather did not extend south into the dry areas in the southwest, but that's just kind of how it plays out this time of year. Now, again, watch how that western trough, the ridge in the east built. We had this upper low sitting, now we're into Tuesday night, so we had this upper low sitting just off of Nova Scotia. That kept just enough of a northwest flow here to keep the heat just to our west. And this was the area that really, just got the big heat this week, and it never was able to push eastward because this thing over here just did not get out of the way. So now that it is getting out of the way, what's happening? Well, our ridge, instead of sliding to the east, is actually getting flattened. And it's getting flattened by that strong upper low moving along the Canadian border, goes up to James Bay tonight, and then it's going to drop southeastward and southward to Maine and off the coast there. Now, the problem for Saturday, as Joe pointed out earlier, is the fact that if you look carefully, it's actually a little bit of a kink here. There's a short wave that's coming down on the western side of this that's dropping southeastward. You actually can see the kink a little better when I run to Saturday afternoon. There's there's a lead one, and then there's another weaker one that's behind it. This is going to be probably the mechanism that produces the clouds that Joe spoke of. And then also notice by Saturday night, the upper low is in eastern Maine. You just get rid of the lines I drew here. Hang on one second. So, here's your
We're
upper
hanging on.
here's your upper low. Oh, no, there you go. Let me put the maps up. I forgot. I was switching back and forth. I was so good too, getting you up when you were talking and everything. So here's your upper low now in Maine. I'll just run it back again just so you can see the progression here from Montana right along the border. You see it goes up, the ridge flattens, and then by Saturday night, you got the upper low sitting in the Gulf of Maine or just right along the coast, and you got these little spokes that are coming around. And that's what maybe might be the minor issue with clouds for Saturday. But that is a chilly flow, make no mistake. And then as we go into Sunday, finally, those little troughs go away, but you're still left with this northerly flow. And the upper low, now we're into Monday morning, and the upper low's barely moved. I drew that L here, sitting here that's for Saturday night, and by Monday afternoon, it's still virtually in the same spot. So we're still being protected, all the while another ridge is building here in the lower Mississippi Valley, and that's going to start to bring
That looks like a classic. That looks like a classic Omega block.
It does.
With those two close systems, yeah.
It
looks like the Greek letter Omega.
Yeah, troughs on both coasts and a H in the middle. And eventually, the upper low drops offshore, but it's still hanging there. I mean, even next Thursday, if the GFS is correct, the upper low is still hanging. Now, the European is a little different because the European wants to kick it out. So I'm not sure. The GFS was easy to discount going into this weekend when we were looking at it because it was basically being polluted by these tropical systems that it was developing down in the Caribbean and Southwest Gulf that wound up being just fantasy. And that was impacting how the models were handling the weather across the United States and southern Canada. Now the model's not really doing that. So I'm not going to discount the possibility that the upper low gets left behind there. And there you see the ridge gets flattened out again. And then here comes another trough toward the end of next week that tries to drop into the eastern part of the United States. It's not like the one we're going to get this weekend, but there's still troughing there, and there's still a northwest flow. And there you go. I mean, you still, even when we go out all the way out into the long range, Joe, if you look at the GFS, it's not. I'm not convinced that we're going to see this pattern just go away. Uh, I like the idea. I've always liked the idea that a pattern stays until it goes, basically. The trend is your friend. And oftentimes the models like to break patterns down in the long range, and in reality, it doesn't happen. Here's the European. The European, a little different in that it's a little less vigorous with the system in the east for this weekend, so it doesn't really have as much troughing coming down and around, although it does drop the upper low to Cape Cod come Saturday night into Sunday morning, and then it just starts to kick the whole thing away. It just kicks it out to the east faster than the GFS does. It's still hanging there by the middle of next week, but it's much further to the east and offshore. This maybe allows the ridge to try to build, but the ridge is in right along 95. I mean, we're going to be just kind of on the edge of this. I don't know how hot it can get. Now, the European wants to build the ridge across much of the United States by day 10, and this would suggest that the last days of June could turn out to be very warm to hot in the Northeast. But as I just said with regards to what the GFS is doing, I would not rule out the fact that the European may not be in the right place here. I could be wrong.
No, you just have to wait and see what happens. You want both of those models, our best mid and long range models. You want them both on the same page, and if they're not, and there's a discrepancy, you say, okay, well, we'll just have to wait. 10 days is certainly far enough for most people, unless except if you have to have some kind of a major event in your life, and it's very important that you know what's going to happen beyond 10 days from now. But up until then, I think we have it pretty well in hand that here in the Northeast, that's the place to be if you want to stay relatively comfortable. The nation's midsection, again, because of that building ridge, will be extremely hot, especially during the second half of next week, Joe, when they CPC once again, second day in a row, have a large area, central and southeastern states, under excessive heat conditions.
Yeah. By the way, if you look at the GFS at the moment, because it is 0Z and it's already wrong, if you look at the radar, I just freshened it up for you. If you look at what the radar looks like, and now I'll switch to what the GFS had the radar looking like, it doesn't quite match up. The GFS has bigger cells in northeast PA and over the Catskills at 8 o'clock tonight, and the radar obviously shows that they're not quite there. And then the area goes southeast, just kind of falls apart. The second front, this is tomorrow afternoon at 2 o'clock, is just about on our doorstep here. It's not showing any convection, but I'm going to respect the dynamics in that you're probably going to see one of these really thin lines of storms that might develop. And then you see the gradient for this time of year is pretty tight for Saturday. And also, you'll notice that by Saturday evening, there's a little couple of strands of showers there to the east of New York City, and that's the upper low kind of shooting some of that some cloud cover back westward, and that upper trough trying to come around. I'm not going to mention any showers, although I could see that there could be for New England, certainly, and maybe for southeastern New England Saturday night, but. They don't. I don't think they'll back any further west than that. And then Sunday, as things start to pull away, it should be certainly the better of the 2 days overall. But overall, it's going to be an okay weekend. It's not going to be, we're not talking about washing out Saturday by any stretch of the imagination. But the highlight will be the temperatures this weekend and how cool they are. And then next week, there's something on another system, Joe, that comes over the top, goes into Canada and then drops southward. During the day on Tuesday, you see it there with some showers, and then it's gone. And then there's some kind of front that goes by. It comes along about Wednesday. And it's just starting to look like a summertime map where the pressures are low, and you got a 1018 high, and there's no real definition to the flow. I did notice that the GFS on this run does actually try to make a tropical storm in the eastern Gulf of Mexico around day 9 and 10. So we'll have to take back what I said about the model maybe not being polluted with tropical systems. Perhaps it is, and maybe that's why it's doing all its troughing in the east. But I still want to hold on to that idea. But it kind of looks like as we go into the end of the month and the beginning of July that it's basically going to be the weather, the typical weather that you see across the U.S. at the end of June and the beginning of July. I don't see anything too unusual here going forward.
I'm looking at the 18Z NAM Foos, and it's pretty much the same as the 12Z North American run. And interesting, at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, Joe, at the lowest level of the atmosphere, the R1 level, the relative humidity is pegged at 93%. Now that's pretty humid, 93% for the lowest level of the atmosphere. The mid and upper levels aren't very wet at all. In fact, the mid level, the R2, is only 28%, and the high level, 19% at the R3. It's just the low level of the atmosphere that is moisture laden. But then 6 hours later at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the R1 level goes from 93% to only 47%. I mean, that dries out mucho quico. So, and the winds, which are southwesterly at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, shift into the west and pick up to almost 20 at the boundary level. So what that tells me is that front that we're talking about with the possible skinny line of convection is probably going to move through LaGuardia. If you pin your hopes on this, probably will move through before 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Once it does move through, the atmosphere is going to dry out at all levels. Well, just the low levels. I mean, my God, the mid and upper levels are already quite dry. So if you're pinning your hopes or hoping for a thunderstorm to crop up or pop up tomorrow, it would have to come before 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, because that's when at least the low level of the atmosphere is moist enough so that you might be able to get or squeeze something out of that. But once we get to 1 or 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, that's it. It's all over as far as any kind of thunderstorm or shower threat is concerned. A very quick drying out of the atmosphere. And also, because the winds turn into a west and west-northwest direction, the boundary level temperatures go from 21 at 8 o'clock tomorrow in the morning to 29 by 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So that drying, that rapid drying, and that westerly wind that picks up in the midday and afternoon is going to cause the temperatures just absolutely soar. And yeah, temperatures tomorrow, especially inland, may very well take a run at 90 degrees here. And even if it doesn't get to 90, it's going to be well up into the 80s. So it's going to be a real sultry summer day tomorrow by the afternoon. And then we very quickly see a tremendous drop at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. The boundary level temperature, the T1, is 29 degrees Celsius. 24 hours later, at 48 hours, Joe, the temperature at the boundary level, the T1, is down to 13.
That's cold. That's cold for this time of year. That's cold.
16-degree drop in 24 hours from 2 p.m. tomorrow to 2 p.m. on Saturday. Yeah, that big drop is going to really be felt on Saturday with those gusty winds.
By the way,
well.
just for laughs, how low does the T1 get in Albany or Burlington, Vermont? I'd be curious.
At Albany, the T1 gets down to 8.
Jeez.
At Burlington, it gets down to, get this now, 6.
You got to wonder whether you got to wonder whether with some of that back edge moisture, that some high mountain top might see some snow. All the while on a week where it got to where temperatures got up in the middle and upper 90s as close to us as Ohio. That's just crazy.
Well, let's go. Why don't we all go to Mount Washington for the weekend? See what happens on Saturday. Right? Yes.
Now, in honor of our South American friend who is on the chat board, I hope he's still there. I was kind of looking. I rarely look at this, so I was kind of looking at this. And I was like, okay, how do I put the fronts on this? Because everything, it's clockwise versus counterclockwise, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just watching these weather systems moving along. And you'll notice, by the way, if you look at the bottom of the screen, at the southern part of Argentina, you're getting some snow there. And in the South Atlantic, you're seeing some snow. But I'm looking, Joe, at Brazil, and it looks like most of the country is dry. I mean, bone dry, except for the southernmost part where there's some showers and thunderstorms that crop up from time to time. These areas of rain, a couple of weather systems. But I'm just running this through here, and through 16 days, there comes a big system from the south heading into the west coast of into Chile. Santiago, Chile. Da da da.
Yeah.
Santiago, Chile. Yeah, it's pretty dry. That's what I mean. I guess that's the only conclusion I can make. It's bone dry for most of Brazil for the next 16 days.
And it all depends upon what kind of a map you're looking at. On one of the best known flat maps called a Mercator map, Canada, for example, looks twice as large as the United States.
That's because
And
Canada
Greenland,
is twice as large as the United States.
oh, no.
Yes, it is.
Well, not twice as large.
Geographically?
Well, what I'm trying to say is that you look at a Mercator map, Canada looks twice as large as the United States. Greenland is larger, it seems larger than South America. We know that's not the case. Yet we know that if you look at a globe, Greenland is smaller than Brazil. Brazil is a big country. As far as Canada versus the United States, let me see.
By the way, I want to just share this. By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt. No, you want finish your thought. This is you're more important. Finish your thought.
I know Canada is larger than the United States. I don't think it's twice as large as on a Mercator map, it looks overly large, maybe about 1.5 times larger than the U.S.
All right, well,
but not certainly twice as. I don't know.
In terms of square miles, it is Canada is geographically larger than the United States. That we can agree on. Whether it's 1.5 or 1 3/4 or 1 7/16 or 1 15/16, I don't know.
It really doesn't look that much larger.
Yes.
At least that's on my eclipse globe with all of the eclipses for the 21st century.
We have. I just want to acknowledge someone on the chat board, Rob West, who says the only severe weather is in his pants. Well, if it's like if it's like some of the severe weather that was forecast for parts of New York State and Pennsylvania, well, doesn't turn out to be too much, does it? Anyway, I just had to go down that particular road. Again, it's Bob Grant. He's here somewhere in this room. Where are you, Bob? I can feel him. He's here. Get off my phone, you old bag. Christinapedia has settled this, okay? And actually, it says Canada is 3.85 million square miles and the USA is 3.79 million. So it's only a little bit bigger.
Yeah, there you go. But if you look on a Mercator map, Canada looks gigantic compared to the United States.
Yes. So, well, in the wintertime, we love Canada because they send down our cold air masses and they make all the snow, and they make all the snow lovers, basically beg for that cold air. Is it going to come? Is it not going to come? We don't know.
I mentioned to you that one time I was doing the weather on WMCA radio. WMCA radio used to be owned by R. Peter Strauss, who was a very rich man. He had a lot of power in the radio industry. And the thing is that you mentioned Bob Grant, and everybody thinks of Bob Grant as, oh, Bob Grant. I think many people were pushing Bob Grant to try to run for mayor of New York. And they thought that, oh, nobody is going to push Bob Grant around or whatever. I have to tell you, and WMCA had some of the big names in radio when I was there. Barry Farber, Bruce Williams, Barry Gray, Bob Grant was there. All of them, every last one of them kowtowed to R. Peter Strauss. You didn't want to fool around with R. Peter Strauss because he was a very powerful man in radio. And those guys, I guess, wanted to have a job. And so basically, R. Peter Strauss wanted to have yes men surround him.
Right.
And while a lot of people might not think of Bob Grant as a yes man or somebody who would kowtow to anybody, believe me, folks, because I was there, Bob Grant used to kowtow to R. Peter Strauss. So regardless of how you thought about him and you enjoyed how he used to put people down and ran a show where it seemed like he was always the boss. Believe me when I tell you that when it came to being with the man who signed his checks, Bob Grant would bend over and kiss that guy's toes.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well,
so
Bob Grant had when he had his he I think he had his show was in national syndication for a short period of time. He did a much different type of show for the that went out across the United States than the one that he did for New York. It was almost like having two different people.
oh yeah, well he got his persona was developed after he came to WMCA. He actually said on more than one occasion when I got and signed the contract to be at WMCA and I realized what I got myself into with R. Peter Strauss as my boss. He said I did everything in my power to break that contract. And his way of trying to break the contract was being mean, nasty, surly to most anybody and everyone who called his show.
Yes.
They even and one day in the middle of being mean and nasty or whatever, he gets a phone call from Strauss. He's saying, "This is it. I'm out of my contract. He hates it." And Strauss said, "Hey, I love what you're doing. Keep it up."
Your numbers are right. Your numbers are through the roof.
Exactly.
Oh
Exactly. The
God.
numbers were going up crazy. People were saying, "You got to listen to this guy on WMCA." There was another guy before Bob Grant. There was a guy named Joe Pine, and Joe Pine used to tell typically Joe Pine would tell his listeners, "Go gargle with some razor blades. Get off my
Oh
phone."
God.
And Bob Grant was trying to be like another Joe Pine. He figured that was going to get him off of MCA, and instead he was there for years, and then he moved over to the ABC. But that helped to build the Bob Grant persona. Bob Grant really was out west. I think he was more of a sportscaster when he was on the West Coast before he came to New York, and he was thought to be a very nice guy
Yeah.
who came to New York, and it was a total changeover, and now he's a legend, radio legend for the kind of persona that he built up. Just trying to get out of that contract with MCA. Amazing.
Johnny Quest is pointing out that where he is, 3,000 feet up in northwestern Virginia, it's gonna be down in the 30s Saturday night. I
Yeah, well,
probably
here
will.
we'll probably be in the 40s.
Yeah.
We're probably going to be in the 40s, I think, Sunday morning or Saturday night, Sunday morning.
I might get.
So,
I probably will get down into the 50s Saturday night and a Sunday morning, and then still get up to the mid and upper 80s, but because the dew points are going to be so low. But I am looking forward to the weekend. So speaking of the weekend, Sunday our show is usually at 11 a.m. Eastern time. I'm still not sure what's going on this weekend. I'm tentatively being told that my my daughter, my son-in-law, and my grandsons are coming up Saturday, in which case we're good for Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So I will let you know for sure once she lets me know what's going on.
would you bring on one of your grandchildren on Sunday so we could all
No, no.
wish you a happy
If if they're here on Sunday, I'm not going to do the show while they're here.
Oh, well,
Okay.
well. I think you
'Cause-
should.
No, I don't
I
want to
think
do.
you should bring on
No,
your
because that's
the
that.
whole Chiafi, the
No,
little Chiafi.
no, they're not chaffies. But
I know they're not Chiafis. They're Chiafis at heart, though.
yes, they're half chaffies. But
Whatever.
no, I'm not gonna. It's a matter of spending. I want to spend when they're here. I like to want to spend the day with them and not have any distractions. So anyway, we'll let you know. Just watch for the notifications. So for now, let's tentatively say that we will be on Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern time. So if that changes, we'll pass on the information. Otherwise, have
Yes.
a great Friday, have a great Saturday, and we'll see you on Sunday on Father's Day.
Father's Day, yes.
Yes. All right, folks.